I think that's enough happy talk. Let's talk sad talk. I believe you have some Raiders stuff you want to get off of your chest, my friend.
Ooh. Um, yeah, Monday Night Football, Raiders versus Cowboys. What an absolute disaster. You're embarrassed again. Another blowout. I can't say one positive thing about this football game. Like, you cannot hang your hat on anything that looked good. The one play that was maybe cool was Max Crosby getting a strip sack in the red zone, and the Raiders offense, like, all they needed to do was score a touchdown. All they could squander is, all they could muster is a field goal. They had the short field 2 drives in a row, and they got 6 points. So, I mean, the game was further than what the score indicated. Dallas clearly let off the gas in the fourth quarter and, kneeled the ball down and just kind of let the Raiders, die a quick death. But that game was over. It was absolutely over. So I really have nothing nice to say. Just to recap a couple of things, and then I'm going to get into, I guess, some organizational things. So the game plan was absolutely mind baffling. Like, it was, what are we doing? Like, from the first snap that the Raiders had offensively was straight confusing. In the first half, Vince, 32 pass plays, 3 called runs, 1 scramble by Geno Smith in the first half. You passed the ball 32 times. 42 overall, 42 called passing plays, and overall 12 run plays that were called, not including, some of the scrambling that Geno had to do. We saw on those 42 passing attempts, it was a shit ton of play action. What defense is going to bite on the play action pass when you're not running the ball? Who's going to bite on that? No one. So that was tomfoolery. This is absolutely incompetent football by the highest paid offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. It's absolutely incompetent by the most experienced head coach in the NFL. It's absolute failure. We knew the Raiders defense was going to be challenged because of these wide receivers, and we can not believe in Dak Prescott as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but in the regular season and on Monday Night Football, he puts up big numbers, and he did his job. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, they do this to everybody. It's not just a Raider problem. This is potentially the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. They put up numbers. They do this. They make defensive backs look silly, and they made the Raiders defensive backs look silly. The Raiders didn't help themselves by not having any type of pressure on Dak Prescott. They had 1 sack on the game. I don't even know if they had any other pressures or hurries. But he basically stood back there, stood tall, and picked this defense apart. And then you have your linebackers, your defensive backs. They can't make a tackle. I don't know how many times I've seen tight ends, wide receivers just running over this Raider defense and pushing guys around like rag dolls. It was embarrassing. It was literally 0 effort. They quit. They absolutely quit in this game before it even got started. A little bit before the game, head scratchers when they're announcing the roster, Vince, the depth chart. So before the game, it was announced that Jordan Meredith, the starting center for the entire season, who beat out Jackson Powers Johnson for the starting center job, was then moved to guard, and the starting center was Will Putnam, a backup lineman. So Meredith is good enough to beat out 2nd round pick JPJ, but is not good enough to beat out backup offensive lineman for this game, who has not started at center this season. And then, to make things worse, You call up for additional O-line depth. You call up practice squad player Antonio Mafi, and then you healthy scratch your 3rd round draft pick, Caleb Rogers. So you don't even give the rookie any burn. It's week 11. He had a bye week, and he's not ready to just be active. He can't get any reps. So is that Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly and the coaching staff saying this dude is not ready? He sucks? Or is this a miss on the front office, or both? At some point, you got to see these young guys get some play. You got to see what you have, because this season's over. What are you drafting next? Who are you bringing into the building next season? Otherwise, it's just a completely wasted draft class. So that was mind scratch. That was a head scratcher. And look, I'm not a coach. I admit that. I have never coached any level of football. I'm not coming up here and saying I'm an expert on offensive line play, but don't treat me like I'm an idiot. Don't treat Raider fans like we're a bunch of idiots. We are fans of football. Of course, we're fans of this team. We watch a lot of football. We watch a lot of other teams. We see what good players look like. Last season, this Raiders offense improved with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell when he took over, when you moved Jackson Powers Johnson to the center position and Meredith was at guard and Colton Miller came back off the injury list. The offensive line improved. So you can't convince me that JPJ didn't make a difference at center or can't make a difference at center. So there's that. Moving off of the game and moving into the organization as a whole, I have a theory about some things and about how we got to Pete Carroll, and I'll get into that in a minute. But I want to set this up by saying I think there's a massive disconnect between John Spytek, the front office, and the coaching staff, Pete Carroll. And then there's an additional disconnect between Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Because every week before the game, after the game, we hear Pete Carroll saying what? We got to run the ball. We got to do it now. We got to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And we don't run the ball. So now you're trying to run the ball, or you try to do play action pass on 12 attempts. So you're not really helping anybody. So you're clearly not on the same page. So
I got a question in the chat before, like, on this subject. You think Pete's time is maybe past?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
I'm getting to that. Great question. I'm building up my case.
Right. Here we go.
So my theory, how the Raiders ended up with Pete Carroll. So we got to put our consume some of our member berries. So Tom Brady buys into the team, right? So he's part owner now. I believe as soon as Tom Brady was in and that was going to be confirmed, we knew Antonio Pierce was gone. Tom Telesco was gone because he's going to bring in his own team. And I think the Raiders knew early on that John Spytek was going to be the guy. I think that was 100% certainty that Tom Brady, they go way back to being teammates at Michigan, that John Spytek was going to be the guy. We know that Ben Johnson accepted an interview with the Raiders because of his respect for Tom Brady. Obviously, the Raiders did not get Ben Johnson. I believe behind the scenes that they were trying to convince Ben Johnson to work with John Spytek. And obviously the Raiders didn't have a quarterback, a young quarterback like Caleb. Mm-hmm. And I think Ben Johnson, it was being reported that he wants to bring in his own GM. And that's basically what he got in Chicago. They gave him the keys to the kingdom. So I believe they try to sell Ben Johnson on working with John Spytek, but it didn't work out. And the other coaching candidates, we know they interviewed Aaron Glenn, Vance Joseph, Todd Monken, Steve Spagnuolo. But at that time, it was being reported that they thought they were going to be able to work out a deal with Ben Johnson. I went back tonight and actually found articles by multiple Raider sources that they thought they were in a position to maybe steal Ben Johnson from Chicago. It didn't work out, obviously. So the hiring process is now close to midnight. The top coaching candidates are gone. They're off the table, and it seems like the Raiders were not sold on the list that I just read. So now behind door number 5 is Pete Carroll. And I think Pete Carroll was, how do you say it respectfully? I don't want to say desperate, but he was eager to get back into coaching. And I think he was probably one of the few coaches that would work with John Spytek. Not that John Spytek is not a good GM or anything like that, but you see that the modern NFL, you see these young coaches get jobs. They want to come in with their own GM, similar to what the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan came in. He brought, who did he bring? That's his GM. That's the power structure.
Came in together with John Lynch. Yeah.
That's the power structure. Is Kyle Shanahan is, he's the, John Lynch is the GM, but who has 51% of control of that relationship? It's going to be Kyle Shanahan. And I think that's what Pete Carroll was willing to do 50-50. And I think that, when John Spytek and the Raiders' point of view is, let's get a veteran head coach in here to hit the reset button, to get good culture, to build a program, all the qualities that we know of Pete Carroll. I think that's what they were thinking is, hey, maybe we could be a sneak, we have a good draft class. We bring in some solid role players, and we could just be a sneaky competitive team and wheel off 6, 7, 8, 9 wins or maybe better. We get Geno Smith, play competent, complementary football, and maybe we could just be sneaky good. It didn't work out. It did not work out. That's my theory, why they were so late into getting a head coach. Now, do I think the question is, has the game passed Pete Carroll by? I don't know if it's the game has passed him by, but I definitely think there is stubbornness where the season's over. The season's over. It's been over. It was over in October, early October. and the refusal to play young guys, the refusal to you took Jack Besh in the second round. How many? He's got like 8 catches on the season.
Yeah, he's out there running snaps on damn near every play, but you're not throwing him the ball.
He's not getting the target. Offensively inconsistent. I know Brock Bowers missed games, but totally inconsistent in targeting Brock Bowers. I was watching it through the Manning cast, and I really like listening to those guys because, they're 2 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, and they know what they're talking about. And what they were talking about with like players like Brock Bowers is, why are you running hitch routes or out routes with Brock Bowers, where you want this guy to catch the ball in motion, in stride, and make a play? Because that's his ability, is once he gets the ball in his hands, he makes people miss. So get the ball in his hands. Instead, you're going 4th down to Brock Bowers on a hitch. That's, both the Manning brothers are like, that's not how you use them. So we're not even using Bowers correctly when he's healthy. And then you're not using Ashton Genty correctly and he's healthy. Like, this guy's in the prime of his life as an athlete. And when he's had the ability to choose which lane, which gap to run, you see him breaking off chunk plays, but you're not giving him the ability to move. And I get that the offensive line as a whole is terrible. So you're playing one-handed, but when you have given him the opportunity, like in a zone run system, he has shown that he can pick the correct lane and make a play. And then you're not helping him when you pass the ball 30 something times. You're not helping the offensive line when they have to pass protect for that long. And then you're not helping your tackles or your quarterback when you have them in shotgun almost every single play, because these tackles are clearly getting overmatched with speed. If I know that, if I see that, how come they don't know that? And I'm on the couch. So I guess my closing point is it's traumatizing, man. It's like flashbacks of Art Shell and the bed and breakfast offense. And I don't really know where they go from here. I really don't, because the problem with the Raiders has been turnover. Is this coach not it? Fired. You bring back John Gruden and the emails come out, he resigns. And then you bring in McDaniels and he's fired. And then the GM is fired. And then it's been 20 years of one and dones or 2 years and done. So if Pete Carroll's not the guy, you're hitting the reset button all over again. And, obviously there's no salary cap on coaches, but now you got to go to Max Crosby, you got to go to Genty, you got to go to Bowers. And then you got to go to, this would be like Bowers' third head coach in 3 seasons. You know what I mean? Then you got to convince the locker room again. It's not the fans, it's convincing your locker room again. And then, that's option number one, fire Pete Carroll. Now you're starting over. And then there's a million questions of who are you going to get. Then you got option number two is you keep Pete Carroll. And obviously maybe there's some changes. Maybe there's some changes offensively. Maybe there's some changes defensively, but you keep Pete Carroll. But what if you're off to another dog shit start? What do you do mid-season? Do you just commit to the 3-year contract with Pete Carroll just for the sake of continuity? And then you commingle that with a bad start year after year after year, the hypothetical game. But this season has shown a reluctance to play young players. So now I'm worried that this coaching staff does not have the ability to develop young players. And that's how you need to build the team, is through the draft, through young players. So even you're going to have it looks like you're going to have a top 3 pick, maybe the number 1 pick, maybe the number 2 pick. If you're the number 2 pick or the number 3, you're going to have a shot at the quarterback that you want. But with this offensive line, you're going to kill the man. You're literally going to see this guy become David Carr. You're going to ruin him with this offensive line. And then even if you say, okay, you know what? We're going to take a tackle. We're going to take the best tackle. We're going to develop them. We're going to build the offensive line. We're going to build this thing the right way, that from the trenches out. Do you have the ability to develop them? Because that's what I'm worried about. Is Vince, I went back and I read a lot of stuff about the Raiders draft. Everybody, CBS, ESPN, Fox Sports, The Athletic, all of these sports pundits gave the Raiders an A+. Great draft. Of course there was people questioning the Genty trade because of the running back that high, and you need a lot of other things. And I get that, but the talent is A+.
Yeah.
Right. And they're not using any of these guys correctly. So I don't know if that's an answer to the question. I don't know. I went into this season being really hopeful and feeling really confident that things would change, but you've been blown out 4 times. The season's not over. And you got Cleveland coming in, and you got a badass on that defense that he has 9 sacks in 2 games, Vince.
I know.
So
that's the only thing that gives me any pause for the Niners going into that game.
He could get 9 sacks in this one game.
He might double up his total.
Terrifying.
He's coming for Strahan's record for single seasons,
So it's just I don't know where you go. And that's the most, I don't know how you say it, the most scary thing for me as a fan is I don't know where you go, because even if you have the number 1 overall pick and you take quarterback, whatever, you believe he's the guy, are you going to be able to develop him and protect him? Are you going to be able to make an offense that caters to these players' skill sets, to their strengths? Because it's not, you have a dynamic running back, you have a dynamic tight end, and I'm not going to crap all over Geno because he's kind of hard to judge when he's running for his life. Like, he's running for his life. There's people, the pocket. I have yet to see a play where, like, really since week 1 where he's had a clean pocket, and he's made his own mistakes. He's not helping himself. It's not all on him, but that pocket is constantly dirty and messy and hard for him to stand back there and stand tall and throw the ball with confidence. So are you going to be able to develop anything? And that's where I'm really scared, man, is I'm losing my faith that they're going to be able to coach him up. So I don't know where you go. I don't know. It just feels like another year of same old Raiders, and that's the most difficult thing to say, is that it's another dead year, and I'm tired of winning the draft and winning free agency, and it's still dog shit season, So my answer, I don't know. I don't know what you do with Pete Carroll. I really don't.